Welcome to the Soulful Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Tandy, and this is Redefining Relationships, Building Partnerships Rooted in Respect, Part 2. So I didn't think I was going to do 2 parts, but I realized that this was very long and very important, and I didn't want to miss any of the information, and so we broke this up into 2 parts. So we are starting where we left off from part 1. So if you didn't listen to part 1, please go listen to that one and then come back to this one later. So we're now going to move into how unresolved conflicts can erode respect and intimacy. And unresolved conflicts happen frequently when there's blaming, dismissing emotions, attacking, a lot of that. Someone who is unwilling to take responsibility or accountability for their own actions, a lot of times it just leaves conflicts unresolved. It can create resentment, emotional distance, slowly undermining respect and intimacy in the relationship, leading to disconnection and mistrust. Unresolved conflicts often stem from individuals who are not willing, like I said, to take responsibility or accountability in the conflict, or who simply want to avoid having to deal with difficult conversations and emotions. There are people that just want to dismiss things. Sometimes it's just as simple as they don't have the emotional maturity, or they did not learn how to handle emotions in childhood, and so it's uncomfortable and they want to avoid it now. Other times they want to avoid the accountability because they've done something harmful to the relationship and they don't want to own up to it. They just want to avoid it, brush it under the rug, you're the problem, and move on. Just basically say your emotional reaction to their behavior is the problem, not their behavior. So we have a lot of reasons why this can happen. Generally, individuals who had emotionally detached parents or experiences where they did not learn how to handle conflict or big emotions in childhood, so they avoid it now. They also may avoid resolution of conflict because they refuse, like I said, to take responsibility for their own actions. This may be from a narcissist, or this may just be somebody who has a low level of self-esteem, emotional immaturity, where they just cannot handle taking accountability for their own actions. Individuals who are unable to take responsibility and apologize, or to be accountable for their own part that they've played in the problem, cannot have healthy relationships. It cannot happen. And you need to understand that if you are in a relationship with someone like that this isn't going to change. This lack of responsibility and accountability for their own part in problems, when they do things and they turn it around on you, or they get angry and explosive about it and say that they're being attacked or whatever, they can't have healthy relationships. Both partners have to be willing to accept responsibility and have open and honest dialogue and be willing to resolve the issue to the satisfaction of their partner. That is where the healthy aspect comes. You have to be willing to resolve an issue to the satisfaction of your partner, and they have to be willing to do the same. And if there's someone in there, either or, that will not do that, you're not going to have healthy conflict resolution ever. And I think it's very important to point out here that any partner that's secretive, that's hiding things, blames you, calls you jealous, if you want to know who they're texting or where they're going, being secretive is not healthy. I would have absolutely no problem to hand my phone over to my husband, and he can go through every text, every email, every social media account, every messaging, check my internet history. He can see it all. He can go through my phone with a fine-tooth comb. He can have the CIA go through my phone with a fine-tooth comb. And I would have no issue with that. None. Why? I don't have any secrets. I literally have nothing to hide. Bring the CIA in, crack my phone. I don't care. There's nothing in there. He's not going to find anything in my phone that he does not know about me. There's no secrets. Now, of course, he's never asked to do that. And I'm not saying, that that's necessary. I don't take this wrong. I'm not saying that's necessary. But what I'm saying is that is a healthy relationship. I don't have any secrets. My husband knows everything about me. He knows things about me that nobody else knows. That's what's so amazing about an intimate relationship, when you can be real and vulnerable and someone can know everything about you and absolutely love every part of you. It's amazing. Just the fact that you both have an understanding that there's no secrets and that there's a healthy level of openness about every aspect of you, that's so beautiful. That's what we're looking for. And if you have to hide something from your partner, because you feel like they won't accept, or they won't, either you have toxic behavior that needs to be worked on, or you need to find somebody that can love that part of you as well. But generally it's because it's a toxic aspect of you that is unhealthy, and so you hide it instead of bringing it into the light, transmuting it, alchemizing it, and healing that aspect of you so that you can show up in the world in a healthy way. So I'm going to give you an example of how a healthy relationship in regards to this happens. No, we do not need CIA cracking phones. No, we do not. We don't need going through phones with fine-tooth combs. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm going to give you now an example of what a healthy relationship with this looks like. So me and my husband works from home a lot. And so he gets a lot of texts, phone calls, emails, and that. But a lot of times we're driving. And so let's say we were driving to the store during work hours and he gets a text. And he gets texts a lot for work, people needing things. He will literally tell me to grab his phone and see who texted him. I can see all of his texts when I open this up. He has no problem with that. We live out in the middle of nowhere. So a lot of times we're driving an hour or more even to just get to Walmart. So we drive a lot during business hours. I check his emails for him. I will respond to his emails. I will check the text, and he's asking me to. He's like, hey, can you check my emails and see if I've got something for work or somebody needs something? And I'll be like, yeah, there's this one. Oh, okay. And I'll respond to it for him, and he'll tell me what to say. This isn't about me having to, quote, check up on him, right? I'm not like, give me your phone, let me see it. Sometimes you may need to do that when you can tell that something's being hidden from you. That is not a problem. If you are noticing secretive behavior, they don't want to tell you where they're going, they're being very secretive, there is nothing wrong with saying, I am noticing red flags here, and asking for that. There's nothing wrong with that. But this isn't even about me checking up on him. It just shows a level of openness. There's no secrets. He has no concern about me seeing who's texted him when someone texts him and he wants me to see what it is. He's not afraid. And that is where you can see an openness that someone has. Like, they're not worried about you seeing their phone. If someone's really concerned about it and you're just seeing this kind of secretive behavior, they don't want to talk to someone on the phone in front of you, this secretive behavior, something's off. Secrecy kills relationships. Because in essence, there are parts of them they don't want you knowing. Even if it's not infidelity per se, there are aspects of themselves they don't want you knowing, and that there will never be full, true intimacy, connection, and love if they have to hide from you. It's just not good. If there's been betrayal in the relationship prior, even before you were married or whatever, during the dating aspects or whatever, if there's been betrayal, rebuilding trust requires openness. And sometimes that means I am going to check your phone. If there has been betrayal, part of that is I'm an open book now. If I'm being honest and fully committed that I want a relationship to work, if you have been the one who has betrayed someone, if you really want that relationship to work, it's like, my phone is an open book to you. I am an open book. And if somebody is willing to say that to you, you know that they are genuine in wanting to heal this relationship. So if there has been betrayal, I can look at your phone at any moment without hesitation and you hand it over to me. And if that's not the case, they're still hiding things. I'm sorry, but there comes a point where when you have acted in a way that is betraying a relationship, it's no longer about trust. Trust gone, out the window, done, over. You have to prove yourself. And if you don't want to do that, there is no relationship. You're not actually sorry. You're not actually trying to build a relationship. You're just trying to keep this person over here while you do whatever the hell you want over here. If it were me, I would say, I am sorry. This is not the kind of relationship I want to be in. You either rebuild the trust or there is none. That's just how it works. So I'm going to give you a little example about a healthy conflict resolution before we move on. So we have a couple. They've been arguing about household responsibilities. This is really common, very common, especially in just the mindsets that we have that household responsibilities go to on the shoulders of only one partner, which is very common. So the wife is feeling overwhelmed by the imbalance of work, while the husband is believing that he's already contributed enough. He financially provides. I'm giving you a very traditional religious situation here because this is really common. Instead of letting frustration escalate, though, they decide to have a calm conversation after dinner when they're both relaxed. And the wife uses the I statements. I feel stressed when the chores pile up because I can't manage them by myself. I can't manage this. And husband is listening actively and acknowledges her feelings. I can see how that would be really stressful. I didn't realize how much you were handling on your own. And then together, they say, okay, how can we find a solution that we are both happy with? So they decide to create a fair chore schedule. And the reason that they do this is that he just doesn't think of these things. He's not used to it. He just doesn't think of it. And so in this way, there is just a list on the fridge and it addresses both of their needs. And by approaching this conflict with empathy and a willingness to collaborate, they not only resolve the issue, but they have strengthened that relationship. You see how that works? Now, if he had been like, look, I financially provide and I do this and I do that, and not going to end well, right? Both people have to come together and say, okay, let's find a way that we both can be happy. So we're going to move into the next one, ending toxic, abusive, and narcissistic relationships. Now, I really want to help you understand how healthy of a relationship you are in, so we're going to go in depth here because this is such an important topic. Far too many people stay in relationships where they are repeatedly and consistently disrespected, lied to, cheated on, dismissed. There is no love, no respect, no connection, no true intimacy. I see it all the time. And there are some people that are not able to have intimacy and probably should not be in relationships because all they want to do is use other human beings to pleasure themselves. That's all they really want. And you just happen to be a roommate that's there for basically so they're not lonely. And I know that they probably wouldn't admit that, but that's how they live their life. It's not fair to you to be that. Everyone deserves true intimacy, and that's why we're going to talk about sacred intimacy in a minute. So, toxic religious dogma leads a lot of people to stay in relationships that are abusive and extremely unhappy because religion claims God wants you to stay married no matter what. How do I know this? I've told this story many times, but I'll tell it again. When I was in ministry school, we were taught that a woman who is being physically abused should be advised that she cannot divorce her husband, even if the abuse lands her in the hospital. Literally, that was the example that was given. That was the literal example. Her only course of action, according to God, their idea of what God wants, is to be separated from him for the rest of her life. They say God hates divorce. This is toxic and abusive in itself and has absolutely no scriptural basis whatsoever, even though they think it does. It is time to take your power back. Step into your own individual sovereignty and choose what you want in your life and what you want in a relationship. You deserve to be honored, respected, loved, and cherished. And if your partner cannot provide that because of their own messed up, unhealed garbage, you have every right to walk away. And I just want to say that right now because we're getting into toxic stuff. That's what we're going to be talking about. You have every right to be happy. You have every right to be loved. And if this person can't offer it to you, you don't have to stay. And I know it can be hard, and you're afraid that you're not worthy of love. And I know that you are afraid that nobody is going to be able to love you. But you're wrong. There is a soulmate out there for you. There is someone who can love every part of you. You are lovable, and you do deserve it. So, let's look at some red flags for toxic relationships and abuse. Number 1, gaslighting. This is a manipulative tactic where one partner causes the other to question their perception of reality, their memory, or their own judgment, or even just the way that they do things. This behavior is often subtle and insidious. I've seen it. I know of a very young woman in her 20s that is in a relationship like this, and she has no idea, and she worships the ground he walks on, and he is a full-blown, certifiable narcissist. So, it involves repeated denial of facts, twisting the truth, outright lying. So, for example, a gaslighter might claim, that never happened. I never said that. You just make stuff up. You're always just making a big deal out of nothing. That would be gaslighting. Okay? When confronted with their hurtful actions, they will make the victim, they will make you doubt your own experience. I would have never done that. You just didn't understand. I would never have said that to you. I don't do that. And if you can actually provide a recording to them and say, listen, this is what you said, then they will start calling you crazy and psycho and what kind of crazy person records someone. They will still make you the problem. Over time, gaslighting erodes self-confidence and trust. It can leave you feeling confused, powerless, dependent on the abuser for validation. They never take responsibility for anything. They will not apologize. You are always the problem. They never do anything. And a lot of times they will even start to claim that you have a mental illness. And they will start to make people around you think that you are mentally ill and there's something wrong with you. And that's why you're saying that they have done something or, whatever. If your partner is always denying that they said or did something and then turning and blaming you as if you are the problem, this is gaslighting. It's extremely toxic, it's abusive, and it indicates an extremely emotionally immature individual. It can be an indication of narcissism, but you cannot have a healthy relationship with someone who does this. If they refuse to take responsibility, they refuse to apologize, they dismiss your emotions and try to blame you, this will never be happy. You will have moments where they're nice, but this relationship is going to be like a wild ride of a roller coaster of pain and hurt and struggle. It's not good, and it isn't going to change. So you really have to decide, do you want to live with this for the rest of your life? Because they will always behave in this way, and it will always be your problem. And I'm not saying that from me. I'm saying they will always make it your problem. You are always bad. You are always wrong. You are always the problem. Okay? I personally would not want to be in a relationship like that. It's never going to be a deeply fulfilling relationship. That's for sure. Next one is isolation. So isolation is another common red flag in toxic relationships. And it occurs when one partner intentionally cuts the other off from their support system, such as their friends, family, or colleagues. And sometimes it's not as overt as you might think, so you don't even really realize it. Again, I apologize for the heater. I said it's 19 degrees outside. I got to keep it warm in here. So I apologize if that's in the background. So this can be achieved through controlling behaviors. So they may discourage social interactions. I don't like it when you go out with your friends. You go out with your friends too much. And maybe you do. I don't know. So you really, again, have to be willing to self-reflect. Do I really? But be honest with yourself. Belittling your friends or your loved ones. That's a red flag no matter what. Limiting your access to transportation. So if they're counting the miles on the car, they only want to have one car, you're forced to take public transportation. And I'm not talking about you legit don't have the money. I'm talking about they are intentionally limiting your access to transportation. Telling you they don't like your friends, they don't like your family, demanding that you not see them, because they don't like them. It's fine. I mean, I don't super like my husband's family, but we go to the parties, we do the thing. Like, I don't demand that he not see them or try to limit his access to them. They're not super nice to me. It's fine, right? So again, you do have to really evaluate the level that this is at, right? Because it's fine if your spouse doesn't super like your family. If your family has some toxic dynamics and they don't like them, that's normal. Making excuses for why you can't see friends and family, moving you away from friends and family intentionally. And sometimes this one can be hard. I mean, you move for jobs, that's normal. But I have seen literally intentional, like I am directly, intentionally looking to move us out of state, away, creating drama to make you feel guilty for spending time with friends or family, that kind of stuff. The goal of isolation is to make you entirely reliant on the abuser. So it's going to make it hard for you to seek help or recognize the toxic dynamic because you're slowly spending less and less time with your friends. Now, here's the thing. If you're after work going out with your friends every night and you're not spending time with your partner, that's a problem. They have a legitimate reason to be like, this is a problem. But, if they're at work and you're going to lunch with your friends or something like that, and it's not even interfering at all with your relationship, that's where we're seeing toxic dynamic. Over time, you may feel trapped and alone, unable to break free. You may begin to lose friends because you stop hanging out with them out of guilt. You may have lost a close connection to family members because they're causing, I don't like them, you shouldn't talk to them, you shouldn't spend time with them, you love them more than me, this type of stuff. If you feel isolated and you've lost connections with family and friends you once had due to the behavior or actions or guilt tripping of your partner, it's critical that you recognize that this is not healthy. This is isolation, and it can be extremely damaging and can dramatically impact your mental health. In my opinion, this is not really a relationship that you should stay in, but of course it is always up to you. You definitely need to evaluate if some of this is happening to you. So then we're going to look at physical, emotional, sexual, and financial abuse. And yes, all of this can happen in relationships. It can manifest in many forms, each of which can cause profound harm to the victim. Emotional abuse involves verbal attacks, yelling, constantly blaming you, manipulation, constant criticism, aiming to undermine your self-worth. And it really depends on how toxic the individual is, where they take this. So, examples of emotional abuse and manipulation. We're going to look at both of these. Manipulation tactics, gaslighting. We talked about that earlier. Making you doubt your memory or your perception. You're imagining things. That never happened. I would never say that. You're always making stuff up. You're crazy. That's gaslighting. Silent treatment. Refusing to communicate as a punishment or a way of control. So, silent treatment, always abusive. Always, always, always. That is never okay to give someone the silent treatment. It's abusive. It's also a form of manipulation. Because then you're feeling bad. What's wrong? Why aren't you talking to me? Right? It gets you to kind of chase them. Right? It's putting you more in the pursuing them role. Manipulation. Emotional blackmail. Using guilt, fear, or obligation to manipulate. You may see this in some of your familial relationships. I know my mom does this one. My mom actually does a lot of these. Guilt, fear, obligation to manipulate you to do something they want you to do. If you really loved me, you'd do this for me. It's going to be so fun. You totally love it. You had this whole and really it's fine for someone to say, hey, I think this would be really fun. But really using your relationship with them to get you to do things. Guilt or fear or your obligation. If you love your mother, you would do this. Okay? That's emotional blackmail or emotional abuse to try to use their relationship status with you to get you to do something. There's also triangulation. So they're bringing a third person to validate their perspective and isolate you. So you'll see even my friends think you overreact. Even my friends think you're totally crazy. My family thinks you're totally crazy. My family did that, okay? They're bringing in someone and then trying to isolate you as the crazy one or the bad one. Okay? They are like validating their position and saying that you're the problem. Stonewalling. So this is shutting down a conversation to avoid accountability. So they've done something very harmful, whatever it was. And they're just going to shut down. They're not going to talk. They don't want to be accountable. I don't want to talk about this. They don't want to work through it and create a healthy relationship by apologizing and being accountable. So they're just going to stonewall you. Again, a lot of these things, you're never going to have a healthy relationship with somebody that does these things. It's just absolutely impossible. Then we're going to move to criticism, personal attacks. So they're going to insult you. You're lazy, you're useless, you don't ever do anything right, you're stupid, that kind of stuff. And just insulting you. Insulting anything about you. Anything. Belittling your achievements. So let's say you were like the number one salesperson, or you won an award at work. Anybody could have done that. There's nothing special about that. Belittling your achievements. Some of you are like, my parents did this. I know. You're going to see this in a lot of relationships. You may even see it in friendships. It's not always romantic relationships. Mocking you or sarcasm. So they're using humor to demean. Wow, great job cleaning. Did you miss a spot? That kind of stuff. So when they're using sarcasm to humiliate you, to demean you, to mock you. Undermining your confidence, constantly pointing out your flaws. You're never going to be good at that. Why do you even try? You want to learn the piano and they just keep making, you're never going to learn that. That's just annoying to listen to, that kind of stuff, okay? Then we're going to go on to verbal attacks, name calling. You're an idiot, you're worthless. Any name calling. It may even be swearing at you, all those kind of things. Abuse. This is abusive. You should not put up with this kind of stuff. Any of this, mocking you, belittling your achievements. These in relationships, this should be completely unacceptable. Walk out the door. This is not acceptable at all. None of this. Shaming you, publicly or privately. Pointing out your perceived inadequacies in front of people. This is absolutely unacceptable as well, even if it is privately shaming you. Explosive outbursts, yelling, screaming, trying to intimidate you, dominate you. Yelling and screaming is never appropriate. This is never okay. This is someone who has a lot of emotions that they don't have a handle on. It's just not healthy. Someone that's willing to work on this, someone that's willing to go to therapy, someone that's willing to work on things, maybe. But I definitely would not stay in the same home with someone that yelled and screamed that did this stuff. It's just, you don't deserve this at all. Threats, either direct or indirect. So you'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows about this. That kind of stuff. We're threatening you. It doesn't have to be a threat of direct harm. Even just saying, you're going to regret this. This kind of indirect, I'll make you pay for this kind of thing. Okay? Not okay. And we move into blaming. So we have projection. They are accusing you of their own behavior. You're so controlling. When they are the one that's controlling, right? You make everything about you when they make everything about themselves, right? So they're projecting their own behavior on you. That one can be a little bit difficult for some people to see, because usually the one that's being accused of this is thinking, am I controlling? Because a lot of times when we're upset when someone's neglecting us, and we're like, they're spending all their time with their friends, or they're whatever it is that they're doing, they're being very neglectful of the relationship, and we're like, you're asking for your needs to be met, and then they're calling you controlling. Sometimes you're like, oh, is that controlling? I don't know. So it can be hard sometimes. Victim blaming. They hold you responsible for their actions. So if they say, if you hadn't made me so upset, I wouldn't have acted like that. So this a lot of times happens with abuse. If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have got so upset about it. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't said this or done that. That's victim blaming. Super toxic. You should not be in the same living space with this person. Okay? Very, very dangerous. Making you the problem, avoiding accountability. Everything's fine till you ruin it. That, okay? Are you starting to see patterns here? A lot of this is very toxic. You're not really going to have a healthy relationship with someone like this because you can't control their behavior. And I want to tell you 100% you don't deserve to live like this. And these people really, in my opinion, these people need to live alone. They should not have children. They should not be in relationships until they are willing to do the work that needs to be done. They need to get therapy. They need to get help. They need to be working on themselves and get in a good place before they enter relationships. None of these people should be in relationships, but a lot of times we get people, very broken people, that enter in relationships with them because it's familiar. They grew up like this. This is familiar. Your parents talked to you like this. Your parents treated you this way. And so you've entered into a relationship that feels like that feels familiar, or you feel like that's what you deserve, that's what you're used to, when in reality it's very toxic. So controlling behavior. Now this, like I said, this is a tough one, but they're constantly checking your phone, your emails, your whereabouts. They're trying to control your appearance, your friends, your career. You can't wear that type of thing. So, like I said, if there's been a betrayal in a relationship, or sneaking around, being secretive, that kind of thing, and someone's like, concerned about that behavior, that's not controlling. They are trying to figure out what you're trying to be secretive about and why, and that's legit. But if you have someone where they are just demanding, I will check your phone, I will check your emails, I need to know where you are at all times, you will not wear this outfit, you will not do this thing, I don't want you to be friends with that person. They are trying to monitor you and control you. That is not okay. Okay? Invalidating your feelings. You're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. Why do you always act like this? Why are you always crying over everything? You're so emotional. Not healthy. This is somebody that's uncomfortable with emotions, avoids them themselves, and doesn't know how to handle someone else's. But if they're not willing to recognize that within themselves and to take accountability for, like my husband, for example, grew up in an emotionally sterile environment in his home. And we've discussed the dynamics. When we first got married, he really struggled with emotions. He was never toxic. He's the sweetest human being. I absolutely love him. He's not this way. But he would get a migraine if I would cry or get emotional about something. He literally could not physically handle emotions. He was afraid of them. And he would emotionally shut down in certain situations, and not in a toxic way, but he was willing to look at his childhood and willing to look and say, I never learned how to deal with this. Nobody talked about anything in his family. Emotions weren't dealt with. And so he was willing to look at this and work through it, and it worked. It's fine. But somebody who doesn't want to admit that, and a lot of these rough and tumble tough people tend to not want that. I don't deal in emotions, I deal in facts. I see this all the time. No, you are emotional. You just don't want to admit it. They overreact to things. That's emotional. But if they're not willing to look at themselves, this is never going to improve. Then we move into guilt tripping. So they'll rewrite events, twisting past incidents so that you feel guilty. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. You might hear that in your parents, I've gotten this, but you don't understand what I was going through at the time. I just had surgery and I needed some help, and you were running off to an event and you're telling me that you weren't able to help. that this is toxic behavior. And I'm actually talking about someone in my family when I say that. Sorry, probably shouldn't have brought that up. But I have experienced this where it's, you don't know what I was going through, and it's all about them, right? Everything that I do for you, and you don't recognize it. You just pick out this one thing. I've had this from family members, okay? Weaponizing sacrifices. So they're going to bring up something they did for you to try to make you feel guilty. I gave up this for you, and you can't even do this one thing for me. I do so much for you, and you're so ungrateful. They're weaponizing something, even, a lot of times in a relationship where, say, they're the one that makes the majority of the money. And I go to work every day, and I do this, and you can't even do whatever for me, that type of stuff. Not healthy. Playing the victim. So they exaggerate their own suffering to make you responsible. And they're playing a victim in a situation where they were actually at fault for something. So let's say you needed something. You're in a bind and you needed some help, and they did not give it to you. And then they'll be like, oh, fine, I'm just a terrible partner then, or whatever. So it's not about the fact that they were not there for you and you needed them. They're not going to apologize. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. No, they're going to make themselves the victim. See? Then we go into the isolation techniques we talked about before, where they're bad-mouthing loved ones, discouraging your relationships. Your friends are a bad influence on you. I don't think you should hang out with them. Your mom, I just don't really like her. I don't really think you should do stuff with her. This constantly kind of, some of it can be really subtle. And maybe your mom is kind of toxic or whatever. But they're just slowly and subtly trying to point out bad things about your friends and your family and trying to reel you in and away from people. Watch out for that one. Because it can be really subtle. And your friend may have done some stupid thing that wasn't very nice, and then they use that to be like, oh, did you see what that friend did? That wasn't very nice. Maybe you shouldn't hang out with them anymore. It should be up to you to decide what relationships you have in your life and what relationships you don't. It's not up to them. You're like, well, she apologized, whatever. You've got to be really careful about it. I mean, it's fine if your partner's upset about someone treating you bad. They should be. But if they're using that as a tactic to tell you what relationships you should continue, that's where it's overstepping, it's crossing a line. They're controlling your time. So if you loved me, you wouldn't need anyone else. Right? And again, like I said, there needs to be a balance, because if you're in a relationship, you need to invest time in that relationship with that person. But if you want to go golfing with some friends, or you want to go out to lunch with some friends or something like that, or there's like a girls' movie night and you want to go do that or something, and it's like they are expecting you to spend all of your time. I don't want you doing anything with anyone else, and they're slowly trying to control that time, control where you are and what you're doing, and that's a red flag. So what's the impact of these behaviors? These tactics are designed to erode self-confidence, create dependency, and strip you of your autonomy. And they do this, well, there's a lot of reasons, but they do this, these people they are emotionally immature, and they are trying to control for various reasons. But recognizing these behaviors is a vital step in protecting yourself and seeking help if needed. Emotional abuse can be subtle, but it can have lasting effects, and it can never result in a healthy relationship. Awareness is crucial for breaking the cycle. You deserve to have a healthy relationship, and none of this emotional abuse that we just talked about is healthy. And so if you are experiencing any of the above that we just talked about in a relationship, this is really, really critical that you evaluate this relationship and how you want to move forward. I don't want to tell anyone what to do, but just be aware that if you stay in this relationship, it will slowly erode self-confidence. It will slowly erode relationships with other people. It will slowly erode your mental and emotional health over time. And even if you're not aware of it, it's very insidious and it's very subtle. You need to get help somehow. So, we're going to move on to physical and sexual abuse. And this involves any act of violence, hitting, pushing, restraining, physical force, intimidation, that type of stuff. And I want you to fully recognize and understand that if you are experiencing any form of abuse, many victims make excuses for the behavior without realizing how abusive things really are, usually with the emotional abuse. But this can also happen with physical abuse and financial abuse and other ones. We're going to get into financial abuse, and I want you to stick around for that, because a lot of women in relationships, women that are in any religion, often experience financial abuse. And I did not realize that someone very close to me that I know is in a very, very, very financially abusive relationship, and she doesn't even realize it. She just thinks that he's a little controlling. But that's not the case at all. It's actually abuse. So let's go on. So, examples of physical abuse in a romantic relationship: hitting, any slapping, punching, striking, pushing, any of that during arguments or conflict at any time. If there is any time where they're slapping, punching, striking, pushing you, shoving you, forcing you into the walls, furniture, pushing you to the ground, any of that, physical abuse. Grabbing you. So if they are forcefully holding your arms, squeezing your arms or your wrists or any part of your body that they are grabbing forcefully, even if they're not restraining you, okay? No one should be grabbing and squeezing you and being in an angry way. They should not be restraining you or trying to control your movement in any way. Throwing things. This doesn't even have to be that they're throwing it at you. If they are throwing objects on the floor, at the walls, any of this can be intimidation. It is obviously showing uncontrolled anger, which is dangerous, because if it hasn't caused physical harm yet, it very likely will at some point. This is not okay. Throwing anything is not okay. Any anger that is unrestrained and uncontrolled is not healthy and should not be tolerated. So choking or strangling, applying pressure in any way to your neck to cause fear or harm. So if they are just kind of squeezing your neck in anger, even if it's not full on choking, not okay, not okay. Again, with the grabbing, doesn't matter. They're not choking you or strangling you, viciously causing harm. They should not be grabbing your neck in any way, shape, or form. Kicking, legs or feet in any way kicking. Even if they have not caused even so much as a bruise, if they have physically even acted out in anger, punching or kicking, if it's been acted out but not physical harm yet, still not okay. But if they are doing this and harming you, even if it's a bruise, that is physical abuse. Pulling your hair, any yanking of your hair in any way is physical abuse. Even if they just walk up and yank your hair in anger, if that's all it is, that's physical abuse. But if they are dragging you, pulling your hair, using it as a form of control or punishment, that is abuse. Any restraining of you, holding you down, preventing you from leaving a room, preventing you from leaving the house, any restraint, preventing you from moving anywhere that you would like to go, restricting your autonomy in any way, shape, or form is abuse. Especially if they're preventing you leaving during a conflict. Breaking or damaging your belongings is abuse. If they are smashing your possessions as a means of intimidation, breaking your things, that's abuse. Blocking exits, similar to what we talked about. Any physically preventing you from leaving a room or the house at any time. Using weapons. If they are using knives or any object in an effort to threaten you, even if it's just threatening you, even if they've never used it, that is abuse. If they are just showing a weapon of some sort as a way of threatening you or coercing you into something, or they're using them to injure you, obviously. I think that one's more, people understand it's abuse if they're injuring you, but a lot of people, if they're just being threatened, they don't understand this is abuse. This is not okay. Any forceful gestures, so they're grabbing your face, they're shaking you, shaking your shoulders, they're using force to demand your attention, they're grabbing you and trying to spin you around so you're facing them, any of that, this is abuse. Here's another one that a lot of people don't realize, reckless driving. If they are using a vehicle to intimidate or scare you, speeding, driving recklessly and erratically to try to scare or intimidate you into something, that's abuse. Anything physically in any way that restrains your movement, your autonomy, or causes any physical harm or threatens any physical harm, all of that is abuse. Should not be happening. Pulling hair, any of it. If you are in a situation like that, this is very dangerous. I also understand that leaving can be very dangerous as well. But you definitely need to be very strategic. Get help. Get help. Get professional help if this is happening to you. That's the main thing that I can say. Reach out and get any kind of help that you can in whatever way is safe for you. And now we're going to move into, the last two is going to be sexual abuse, and then we're going to get into financial abuse. And I want you to stick around for that because it's, a lot of people don't recognize this, but it's so common. So, sexual abuse in romantic relationships. Now, that used to be believed in 1990s and earlier. I think it was in 96. I could be wrong. But it was around that time where prior to 1996, rape in marriage was not a crime. You could be held down and forced against your will, and there was no crime. Because you're married, so he can do whatever he wants to you. And the Bible says that your body is his. And so they just figure, well, the Bible says, so if he wants to force you to do something you don't want to do, no problem. We don't have a problem with it. Literally. That, I was married in near that time. So that's actually, to me, very frightening that this was not considered a crime in any way. But it is now. It was still a crime then. It was still wrong. But in patriarchal societies, they don't see a problem with this. And sexual abuse is extremely common in religious marriages. So, coerced sex. So, if they are pressuring you into sexual activity through guilt or threats or manipulation, that's abusive. Intimacy should be something that is about fostering connection in a relationship and love. There should never be pressure in any way, shape, or form, or guilt. And they should never threaten that I'm going to go do something with someone else, or I'm going to do something outside of our marriage if you don't. That is abuse. If they are threatening to get any sort of sexual gratification outside of your relationship, if you don't do something they want, that's abuse. Should not be happening. Forcing sexual acts, so demanding or physically forcing acts from you that you're uncomfortable with. So if there's something you don't want to do that you're not comfortable with and they're demanding it, guilt tripping you about it, threatening you about it, or physically forcing you, that's abuse. Refusing to use protection. So if you are asking for that, let's say maybe you had a severe reaction to birth control pill or something like that, and you are asking for something that can be a form of trying to control you, any type of refusing your access. So if they sabotage birth control your access to birth control, anything like that, that is abusive. So if they're tampering with your contraception, trying to force pregnancies, sometimes this is a way to try to force women to have to stay in a relationship. If she doesn't have education, like she doesn't have a degree, she doesn't have a job, this can really be a way of control. Again, abusive. Sexual degradation. So forcing you to participate or even just watch humiliating sexual acts or watch something that you don't want to. If they are watching or engaging in something on TV or whatever, and they're trying to force you to watch these things, this is abuse. Or just forcing you to participate in something that is humiliating to you, sexually humiliating. I actually went through sexual abuse when I was 5 years old that involved sexual humiliation. So can be extremely damaging, and this should not be happening in marriage either. Withholding sex as a punishment. So using this as a way to control or manipulate you. That is also abusive. So non-consensual filming of you or photography of you. So if they are ever taking photos or videos without your consent, or distributing photos that were meant to only be for them. A lot of times this happens upon breakups where they will distribute these online or whatever, or threatening to use photos or videos of you to humiliate or control you. All of that is abuse. Ignoring consent. So if they are even touching you and you don't want it, you're pushing it away, you're telling them you don't want that, any type of ignoring consent, from just touching to any form of sexual activity where you have clearly said, either verbally or non-verbally, refusing. If you're pushing them away, pushing their hands away, even if it's not verbal, that is abuse. Using sexual threats, threatening to harm you or others if you don't comply with their sexual demands. That's abusive. Using intimidation, so trying to scare you into compliance. They can get extremely angry or even violent when you are not complying with their demands for what they want. This would be abuse. A lot of this kind of stuff actually happens in the sexual-oriented industry, where there is intimidation and threats if people don't agree to do things they didn't want to do. This is why I say you can't have consent unless unless both people are physically present, because you don't know how this stuff was. You don't know the situation in which the stuff that you're consuming was produced, or how that person got into that place, and so you can't have true consent. Let's see, reproductive coercion. So trying to force you to become pregnant, or trying to force you to terminate a pregnancy that you don't want to terminate. Either one of those would be considered abuse. And sexual assault during sleep or incapacitation. So sometimes they may drug you. That has happened in relationships. Or you wake up to find them doing things to you. So if you are unconscious, unable to consent in any way, shape, or form, this is abuse. This is wrong. Public humiliation, so making comments about your body to other people, making unwanted sexual remarks or advances in front of other people, like trying to force you into public displays of affection that you don't want, making humiliating sexual remarks, making comments about your body, that any of that is completely inappropriate and abusive. Demanding sex after physical abuse. This is another thing that happens frequently. It's their way to, quote, make up. So they are very violent, and then they're demanding this. This is often without even any genuine apology or anything like that. So there are many forms of this. Any type of force, use of coercion, force, threats, guilt, touching you in any way that you don't want. I don't care if you're married or not. It doesn't matter. Consent is extremely important, and someone who loves you and honors you and respects you would never touch you in any way, try to coerce you, force you, and they would never threaten you. And they also would never threaten to do anything outside of your relationship if you don't give them what they want. That is selfish, it is abusive, and it is somebody who feels entitled to gratify themselves in any way, shape, or form by any means. And it is extremely abusive, and you do not want to be with someone like that. These actions are not only violations of personal boundaries, but also create fear, control, and degradation. Recognizing these behaviors is critical for seeking safety and support. abuse of any kind is never justified. And I would suggest that if you experience any of these, even someone who's threatening to do something outside of your relationship, if you don't give them what they want, seek professional help. Intervention may be necessary to escape these harmful dynamics. And it can be, if there's any sort of violence or force or anything like that, these people can be dangerous. So you do need to get professional help in order to navigate this. And then the last one that we're going to look at is financial abuse. This one is often overlooked, and in fact, it is promoted a lot of times by a lot of religions. It was promoted by the religion that I was a part of for most of my life. And this occurs when one partner controls the other's access to money, restricts their ability to work, restricts their access to education, or sabotages their financial independence in any way. And this is, religions 100% do this to women all the time. And this is abuse. This is a form of abuse. It serves to dominate and oppress, leaving the victim feeling helpless and afraid. So what happens, financial abuse is rampant in high demand religions, especially Christianity. But it is also in non-Christian religions as well, and is often presented as God's design for marriage, when in fact it absolutely is not that at all. They use this Proverbs 31 woman idea, not realizing that the Proverbs 31 woman bought land on her own with her own money and farmed it. She had employees. She had several businesses that she ran. This woman was a powerful woman. And I'm like, I don't think you realize what you're saying. But anyway, a lot of times women, what happens when you did not get an education and you have a restricted ability to work and you have children and you're expected to stay home, if you end up in an abusive relationship, you can't get out. How do you support yourself and your children? And this restricts their autonomy in very powerful ways. And I know women right now that are in relationships because of this financial situation that they can't get out. They could never support themselves and their 4 children or their 5 children on the lack of education and resources that they have. And this is why this is so abusive and insidious. So let's look at examples of financial abuse in relationships. And I want you to just think about your own situation or even situations of other people. So number 1, controlling income and resources. So withholding money. Refusing to give the partner access to shared funds for essential needs. Any essential needs. I know the person that I know had to save up her own money, it was just a little side job, and save up her own money to get glasses. So, taking the partner's earnings. So, forcing them to hand over their paycheck and controlling how funds are used. Blocking access to any bank accounts, retirement accounts, mortgages, anything like that. So, if the mortgage on the house is only in their name, they restrict you from, they will not use joint accounts. They don't want you to have access to their money, their bank accounts, their retirements, their things. Denying basic needs. So refusing to pay for groceries, medical expenses, or other necessities where, let's say you're the stay-at-home one, or you don't make very much money or whatever, and they are refusing to pay for groceries, or if you have medical expenses or other necessities that you need, basic needs of life, and they won't pay for that. Another one is sabotaging financial independence. So prohibiting you from having employment, not allowing you to work or pursue a career, which a lot of religions, high demand religions, will do this to women very commonly. They very much discourage a woman from pursuing a career. Interfering with job performance, so harassing you at work, creating conflicts to get you fired, sabotaging your education, so preventing you from pursuing educational opportunities, or strongly discouraging you from getting an education that might improve your career prospects. That is abuse. Misusing or exploiting your finances, so taking out loans in your name, incurring debt without your consent, draining your savings account, so spending joint savings without discussing or agreeing on the expenses, using your credit, so running up your credit card bills that are in your name and then refusing to pay for them, creating dependency. So giving you an allowance, restricting access to all the funds, but just saying, I'm going to give you a small controlled amount of money that you can use, that's abusive. Monitoring your spending. So if they are requiring receipts for every purchase, they're tracking your expenses, they're constantly looking up the bank account and seeing where you're spending money and getting upset if they don't like what you're buying or how you're spending the money. Controlling all the financial decisions. And I know that this is almost demanded by high demand religions, but it's abusive. So making all major and minor financial choices without your input is also financial abuse. Manipulating your financial security, so threatening to cut off support, using financial dependence as leverage against you. If you leave, I won't give you anything. If you leave me, I'm not going to pay a dime for anything. You're going to be up a creek, that kind of thing. Hiding assets, so concealing property, savings, investments from you, and not allowing you to have access to those things. Forcing financial commitments, so pressuring you to co-sign on a loan on a large purchase that you do not want to make. Punitive financial control, so using money as a weapon. Withholding money after an argument or a conflict as punishment. Spending recklessly, depleting your shared accounts on unnecessary items without your consent or without discussing with you. Another one is gambling. Gambling away funds and risking your financial security without regard for you. That is abuse. And I know that gambling, a lot of people have issues with that, but it is very abusive to risk someone else's financial security. And if someone does have a gambling problem, they need to recognize it and they need to get help. This is not something that should be happening without seeking help. Exploiting your vulnerabilities, so taking advantage of a stay-at-home partner, refusing to share finances with a partner who is sacrificing making an income to care for the home or children. This is literally just religion in a nutshell, is taking advantage of a stay-at-home partner. And the reason that I say that is they expect you to shoulder all the responsibility in the home and all the responsibility of the children, and all they do is go to work every day. And they claim that that's contributing to the relationship when they would go to work every day, whether they were married or not. So they are exploiting your vulnerabilities and taking financial advantage of you, just saying, I'm giving you money, you do everything else. That's abusive as well. Manipulating legal financial rights, so threatening to use legal means to leave you destitute in case of separation or divorce. If they are threatening that I will leave you with nothing, that's abuse. Refusing child support or spousal support, deliberately neglecting financial obligations after a separation or a divorce. Making unilateral decisions, so taking on large debts, making risky investments without consulting the partner, or without consulting you. I've seen this happen. I've actually seen someone that I'm close to actually purchase a large piece of land, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the spouse had no idea. Forcing the partner to pay for things. So insisting that partner cover all household expenses or debts. And I know a lot of people say, well, the stay-at-home parent does that, or the stay-at-home partner does that. Not necessarily, because what this means is I'm just going to stay home and game all day, or I'm just lazy and I don't want to do anything. So I'm just going to insist that you take care of everything and I do nothing. This is often seen in a partner who either hoards their own earnings for themselves. So it's like they do make money, but I'm not going to buy groceries. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to, go spend all this money on myself and you take care of everything. That's more of it. Or someone who refuses to work. Let's say you don't have children, you don't have really anything, but they just refuse to work. So, destroying property. So if they're damaging shared belongings, that leads to financial strain for repairs or replacements of things. Financial abuse can create a sense of entrapment. And you may feel you have the lack of resources to leave or to regain your independence. It traps. This often happens to women, and it's often demanded that women, especially from high demand religions, it is demanded that women allow themselves to be completely dependent on their spouse for all of their financial, all of their needs. And it's extremely damaging because they are trapped. No matter what happens in that relationship, they don't have the financial resources or means to get out, is abuse. Recognizing these tactics is crucial for regaining control and seeking help from trusted people or organizations to empower yourself and for abuse recovery. Any of this emotional, physical, sexual, or financial abuse, you need to get professional help, therapy, and be able to move on and find a healthier situation for yourself. Identifying these red flags is critical for preventing long-term damage and reclaiming personal autonomy and sovereignty. If you or someone you know is experiencing any of these behaviors, it's important to seek support from trusted professionals and organizations that are dedicated to help those that are in toxic or abusive relationships. Recognizing the signs is the first step towards breaking free and rebuilding a life rooted in respect, safety, and empowerment. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is sacred intimacy. And this one is really important, and I will be doing podcasts solely on this. But what does sacred intimacy mean? Sacred intimacy means that you understand that sexuality and intimacy are fundamentally about love, connection, honor, dignity, and respect. There's absolutely no place for sexuality outside of a relationship that involves the use of other human beings merely for indulging your own selfish sexual desires. This means whether you are in a relationship or not, you do not engage in any sexual behavior that does not honor the dignity of others. You do not engage in sexual behavior where consent cannot truly be given. And a lot of people aren't going to like this, and I do not care. This needs to be said. Consent cannot be given over the internet. You have absolutely no way of knowing where this content came from, how the individuals involved ended up being involved in it, whether there was force, coercion, a history of sexual abuse, and therefore consent cannot be given without the individual being physically present. Also, consent cannot be given if there is any exchange of money. Why? And I'm not even just talking about sex. I'm talking about any sexually oriented anything. Any. Because what you're doing is you're just basically trying to pay to use someone else's body. Why? Because if a woman is trying to get out of an abusive relationship, maybe she's in fear for her life, she may do things for money she would not otherwise do. A woman who has children to take care of and who cannot provide the basic necessities for her innocent children may do things for money she would not otherwise do. A woman who has a history of extreme childhood sexual abuse or a woman riddled with drug addiction may do things they would not otherwise do for money or for drugs. Therefore, in honoring the dignity of all people and in honoring true consent, sexuality must remain within the bounds of a relationship where love and mutual respect are its foundation. Yes, I'm going to pause here because you need to understand this. Anything outside of that is abuse. I am using you to gratify myself. People say, oh, it's not any different than playing basketball. The hell it is. Listen to me. If I'm playing basketball, if I'm a professional basketball player on a women's basketball team or whatever, or baseball or football, I don't care what it is. I'm in a stand of crowds of people are there physically with me, watching me play. If another one of the players comes up and starts trying to punch me or beat me or harm me in any way, there are referees, there are police, and there are 10,000 people in the stands that are going to stop that from happening right now in this minute. Is there a risk involved? Oh, yeah. I could fall down. Someone could land on me. If I'm getting tackled, I could get hurt. You're right. But that hurt is not intentional. It's an accident. If someone intentionally tries to hurt me, they're going to get punished because everybody's going to see it. It's going to be on camera. There is nothing private going on here. It's also not deeply intimate. I'm just playing a game. I'm playing basketball. I'm playing a sport that I enjoy. I'm not saying sexuality is not enjoyable, but it's deeply intimate. It's also, there's nobody there. If that person wants to punch me, choke me, sexually humiliate me, whatever, I am vulnerable. There's nobody there. There's nobody there to witness what is happening. And this is someone who is trying to use the most intimate parts of me to gratify themselves. It is not the same as playing basketball. It's not the same as watching a basketball game. And anybody who argues for that has a problem. A deep, deep problem. Sacred intimacy is the profound understanding that sexuality and connection transcend physical acts and are rooted in love, honor, and mutual respect. It is a space where both partners feel safe, valued, and cherished, free from selfish motives or objectification. In a sacred partnership, intimacy becomes a deeply emotional, physical, and spiritual experience that strengthens the emotional and spiritual bond between two people. It honors the dignity of the relationship and the unique essence of each partner, fostering a deeper connection built on trust, vulnerability, and mutual care. Honoring boundaries and needs is an essential aspect of sacred intimacy. This includes openly discussing desires, fears, expectations to ensure both partners feel heard and respected. By setting aside dedicated time for meaningful connection, couples can prioritize their relationship and nurture the bond that they have. Simple practices like heartfelt conversations, shared moments of affection, snuggling, caressing, kissing, hugging, holding hands, taking a bubble bath together. Things that foster connection, not just about physical gratification. When intimacy is approached with intention and reverence, it not only enriches the partnership, but also strengthens the respect and trust that form the foundation of a thriving, sacred relationship. Honoring the dignity of your relationship and your partner are key here. Trust. Now we're going to go into building and fostering trust. Trust is the cornerstone of every healthy and fulfilling relationship. It creates a sense of safety and stability, allowing both partners to be vulnerable, honest, and open with each other. When trust is present, couples can navigate challenges with confidence, knowing they have a solid foundation to rely on. Without trust, relationships become strained by doubt, insecurity, and emotional distance. Building and maintaining trust requires consistent effort and mutual commitment, but the rewards, deeper intimacy, emotional security, and lasting connection, are invaluable. Transparency and consistency are key to fostering trust. Being honest in your actions and your decisions, following through on promises, showing reliability over time are practical ways to strengthen this bond. One common trust issue in modern relationships is secrecy surrounding text, social media, and digital communication. Hiding messages, being overly private about online interactions can create suspicion and erode trust. It is absolutely critical to be open and honest about who you are, who you're following, who you're in contact with, your friendships, the content that you're accessing on the internet. You and your partner should be in 100% agreement about the type of content you access on social media and the internet. There should be absolutely no secrets. You both need to be on the same page, and if you are not, compromises need to be made. Respect your partner's feelings and come up with solutions you both can be happy with. Addressing these behaviors involves open dialogue. Partners should discuss boundaries, expectations, and the importance of honesty in digital spaces. Now, I want you to take some time to reflect on trust in your relationship with these journal prompts. What actions or behaviors make me feel most secure in my relationship? Are there areas where I feel mistrust, and why? How can I communicate my needs for transparency and reliability to my partner? By regularly assessing and discussing trust, couples can proactively address concerns and nurture a deeper sense of connection and understanding. So, I know this was long. In this episode, we explored the essential pillars of healthy, transformative relationships and also looked at the dynamics that are toxic, abusive, or unhealthy. From fostering open and respectful communication, resolving conflicts constructively, we've outlined the tools necessary to create a strong foundation. We've delved into recognizing and addressing toxicity, abuse, embracing sacred intimacy, and building trust through transparency and consistency. Each of these elements plays a critical role in creating partnerships rooted in mutual respect, equality, and love. Building a thriving relationship requires intention, effort, and vulnerability. It's about co-creating a space where both partners feel seen, valued, and empowered to grow together. By addressing challenges with empathy and honoring each other's individuality, couples can nurture deeper intimacy and build lasting trust. True love is not found. It's built brick by brick through respect, trust, and unwavering commitment to each other's growth. When you choose to love with intention and integrity, you create a partnership that not only endures but thrives, becoming the center of pure joy for each partner. I appreciate you staying till the end, and I appreciate your support of this podcast. And I wish you the best in all of your relationships.